Online dating. It's a wild world out there, right? You go in hoping to find a connection, maybe even a love story, but you also risk stumbling into some pretty dark corners.
Yeah, it's true. And one of the darkest corners you can find yourself in is the world of romance scams.
It it's heartbreaking, really. You
Yeah.
have these criminals preying on people who are just looking for love, twisting that vulnerability against them. Today, we're diving deep into a couple of cases from the SCARS Institute.
And the SCARS Institute is incredible. They do so much, not just helping victims, but also exposing these scams for what they are, really getting into the nitty-gritty of how they work.
It's scary stuff, for sure. And the stories we're about to get into are tough ones. But
Yeah.
shining a light on these scams, that's how we protect ourselves,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Exactly. So our first story centers around Diane Webb. She's a 70-year-old woman from Idaho, and after being single for 40 years, she decides to give online dating a shot.
And good for her. Right. It's never too late to look for companionship.
Absolutely. Her family is right behind her, super supportive. So she meets this guy, Michael, online. He claims to be from Nigeria. At first, things seem, pretty normal.
And that's the thing with these scams. They often start out so innocently, but one of the biggest red flags right off the bat is the long distance aspect. And it's always there, always a reason why they can't meet in person. In this case, Michael never left Nigeria.
Right. A genuine relationship needs that face-to-face connection, right?
Yeah,
It can't just exist in the digital world.
exactly.
And in Diane's case, this whole thing dragged on for 3 years. 3 years.
Wow.
It's crazy. This guy, Michael, he showered her with affection online, made her feel special.
But all part of the plan.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Building her trust, creating that sense of dependence, and then almost on cue come the requests for money.
Yeah.
A medical emergency, travel expenses, you name it. The oldest tricks in the book.
It's classic emotional manipulation. They create this cycle. Isolation, digital attention, then leveraging that bond for financial gain.
It's sickening, really. Now, this is where it gets truly frightening. Diane, completely taken in by this web of lies, she sells her home and sends him practically every penny she has.
Oh my gosh. It's heartbreaking how these scammers isolate their victims, often turning them against their own families, making them believe that the scammer is the only one they can trust.
It's like they worm their way into your life, your mind, your heart.
And your bank account, unfortunately.
Yeah. And, well, you can probably guess what happens next. Diane flies to Nigeria to meet Michael. But the man of her dreams,
Yeah.
he doesn't exist. Instead, she's met by his captors and held hostage.
It's a nightmare scenario. That moment when the fantasy comes crashing down and they realize they've been tricked, it's devastating.
It's just awful. Diane was held captive for months, malnourished, abused. It's hard to even imagine what she went through.
And tragically, this kind of abuse is common in these situations. Once the scammers realize the victim has nothing left to give, the violence often escalates.
It's horrifying. Thankfully, Diane managed to escape. One of her captors took pity on her and helped her get back home, but the ordeal left her completely broken, physically and emotionally.
Even if they manage to escape, the scars run deep. These experiences can have long-lasting physical, emotional, and financial consequences.
Absolutely. And in Diane's case, tragically, the toll was too much. She passed away due to the damage that this whole situation inflicted on her health. It's a stark reminder that these aren't just internet scams. These are real-life crimes with real-life victims. And sadly, Diane's story is far from unique.
Absolutely. And we have another case from the SCARS Institute reports about a woman lured to Nigeria by a so-called Yahoo boy she met on Facebook.
It's like something out of a movie, but this is all too real.
It is. And these Yahoo boys, they're often operating out of Nigeria using their tech skills to pull off these intricate online scams. Romance scams are their specialty.
And they often work in organized groups, right? Which makes them even harder to track down and bring to justice.
Exactly. It's organized crime, plain and simple.
And this poor woman, she was held captive for over a year. She was financially exploited, forced into a sham marriage. It's just unimaginable.
It really highlights the financial aspect of these scams. Victims often lose their life savings, everything they've worked for. They're left with nothing but debt and emotional trauma.
In this woman's case, unlike Diane, she couldn't escape. She was lucky enough to be rescued. But these rescues, they're incredibly rare, right? It makes you wonder just how big this problem really is.
And that's the scary part. These aren't isolated incidents. This is a global epidemic. The internet has given these scammers a whole new level of anonymity, and they're getting more sophisticated every day.
It's chilling. It makes you want to just, log off of everything and just, I don't know.
Disconnect.
Yeah, exactly. It makes you question every interaction, every message.
Absolutely. It's crucial to be cautious online. We need to arm ourselves with knowledge. So we talked about long-distance relationships as a red flag, but let's dig into some other warning signs. One that often gets overlooked is inconsistency.
Inconsistency, you mean like their story's not adding up?
Exactly. Pay attention to their stories. Do the details change? Are there gaps or contradictions? Scammers often slip up in their narratives.
So it's like you have to be a detective, right? Looking for those little clues, those inconsistencies.
Yes. Another common tactic is rushing the relationship. They might declare their love very early on or try to pressure you into making big commitments quickly.
That makes total sense
Yeah.
because a real relationship takes time. You can't rush something like that.
Exactly. It's about building trust organically, and that takes time.
So if it feels like they're trying to fast forward to the happily ever after a little too quickly, that's a major warning sign.
100%.
And of course, we have to talk about the money requests.
Yep.
You know, those are common. What are some of the specific excuses these scammers use? What should people be listening out for?
Oh, they've got a whole playbook. Sudden medical emergencies are a big one. Or family crises back home, needing help with travel expenses to finally meet you. They prey on your empathy, your desire to help.
Just manipulative.
Absolutely. They're playing on your emotions to get what they want. And the sad thing is, they often target people who are already going through a tough time, making them even more vulnerable.
It's cruel. So what steps can someone take if they think they might be caught in one of these scams? Let's say they haven't sent any money yet, but some things are starting to feel off. What's the first thing they should do?
The most important thing is to take action. First, cut off all contact immediately. Lock them on every platform.
So go into lockdown mode.
Exactly. Protect yourself first. Then, if you shared any personal information, keep a close eye on your accounts for any suspicious activity and report the scam.
Report it even if they haven't lost any money.
Yes. Report it to the platform where it happened. And if you have lost money or you feel like you're in immediate danger, contact your local law enforcement right away.
It can be hard to report something like this. A lot of people feel embarrassed or ashamed, like they should have seen it coming.
And that's completely understandable. But it's so important to remember you are not to blame.
Right. These scammers are professionals. They do this for a living.
Exactly. And the more we talk about these scams, the more we can protect others from becoming victims.
Absolutely. It's like that saying, sunlight is the best disinfectant, shining a light on these dark corners of the internet.
I love that analogy. It's so true.
And you mentioned earlier that these scams aren't just happening on dating sites, right? So, for our listeners out there, what advice would you give about staying safe online in general? What are some universal red flags to watch out for?
It really boils down to being cautious and using common sense, just like you would in the offline world. Be careful about what you share online, both personally and professionally. Don't accept friend requests or engage with people you don't know and trust.
So it's like that stranger danger rule we learned as kids, but for the digital age.
Exactly. Just because someone's on the other side of a screen doesn't make them trustworthy. Be wary of clicking on links or downloading attachments from unknown senders. And if a deal seems too good to be true, well, it probably is.
That old adage holds true, even online.
Absolutely.
It's sad that we even have to have these conversations. But with scams becoming more and more sophisticated, awareness is key.
I completely agree. It's a constant battle, with scammers always coming up with new tactics. But organizations like the SCARS Institute, they're doing amazing work fighting back, raising awareness, and supporting victims.
Yeah. Their website is a fantastic resource. We'll make sure to link to it in the show notes for our listeners. But for now, I want to circle back to the human impact of these scams. We talked about the financial devastation, but the emotional toll is often even more profound. It's like your whole world just implodes. You poured your heart into this relationship, this connection, and then to find out it was all fake, all a lie.
It's a special kind of betrayal, really. And the psychological impact, it can be absolutely devastating. Just think about it. Having your trust completely shattered, the realization that this person you loved, they never even existed.
It's enough to make you want to swear off relationships altogether.
It's understandable to feel that way. And sadly, many victims end up blaming themselves, you know? They wonder how they could have been so naive, so easily fooled.
It's like they're stuck in that cycle of self-blame.
Exactly. But it's so important to remember, these scammers are masters of manipulation. They study their victims, they learn their weaknesses, their vulnerabilities, and they exploit them ruthlessly.
It's predatory behavior, plain and simple.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that anyone can be vulnerable to these scams. It doesn't matter your age, your education, your background. If you're human, if you crave connection, you're a potential target.
That's a scary thought. It's like no one is immune.
Exactly. And that's why awareness is so important. We need to be having these conversations, bringing these scams out into the open.
Shining a light on them, like we've been doing today.
Exactly. Because the more we talk about it, the less stigma there is for victims.
So true. Speaking of which, what kind of resources are available for people who've been through this? What does recovery even look like after something like this?
Well, it's a long road, that's for sure. It's not easy, but healing is possible. The first step is just acknowledging what happened, admitting to yourself, okay, this happened to me, and then reaching out for help.
Because they don't have to go through it alone.
Exactly. There are organizations out there like the Scars Institute that offer support groups, counseling services, legal resources. There are people who understand, who want to help.
That's good to hear. It's about rebuilding, right? Rebuilding trust, not just in others, but also in themselves.
You got it. It's about taking back their lives, reclaiming their power.
It's about finding that resilience.
And it takes time. There will be setbacks, there will be tough days. But with the right support, with perseverance, victims can heal. They can move forward.
Their stories are so inspiring. It's a testament to the strength of the human spirit.
It really is.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I keep coming back to this one question. In this digital age where it feels like everything is online, how do we balance that desire for connection, that very human need, with protecting ourselves from those who would use it against us?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I think it starts with education. We need to be aware of the risks, the red flags. We need to be a little bit skeptical, a little bit cautious, especially when it comes to online interactions.
So it's not about shutting ourselves off completely.
No, not at all. It's about finding that balance. It's about protecting ourselves without letting fear control us.
It's about being open to love and connection, but also being smart, being aware.
Exactly. And if you've been affected by a romance scam or any kind of online fraud, please remember, you are not alone. There are resources available. There are people who care. And there is hope for healing.
I love that message. And to our listeners, if you want to learn more about romance scams, how to protect yourself, or how to support someone who's been affected, please visit the Scars Institute website. We'll link to it in the show notes. Their work is incredible.
They're truly making a difference.
They are. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us for another deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.